straight from the mayor's mouth, with Matthew Dickerson from Dubbo Regional Council.
Well, another week and a busy council week. Firstly, I've got to say, Mr Mayor, Anzac Day was an absolute success. I went to the early morning service. I was late. I had to double park. I froze, but I was there. And I reckon, again, 2,000 to 3,000, maybe more people. It's hard to tell in the park, isn't it?
It is hard to tell, but it was a magnificent event, and I'd love to take credit for it, Richard. The RSL sub-branch do all the organisation for that. Our staff are fantastic in that they make the grounds look magnificent for that. And we've got our staff helping with things like chairs and just being there to help with some of the ancillary areas, which are very important. But it's the RSL sub-branches event, and they do an excellent job. Jeff Mann does an excellent job as the MC for the event. So I'm with you. The dawn service, I estimated 2,000, maybe 3,000, similar. The main service, I probably think there were 5,000 people there. So it's a really positive feeling. Even though we are talking about people that have died, it's a positive feeling that isn't this a great country? And thank you to all those people that have sacrificed their lives, over 100,000 people that have sacrificed their lives so that we can enjoy this wonderful country. So it's a mixed emotion day, but it certainly is nice to see so many people pay tribute.
I couldn't agree with you more on that side of Anzac Day, and we've had pretty miserable headlines for the last couple of weeks, and I think people getting together and showing support for the country, showing support for those who have lost their lives so we can live in this country the way we do was a great thing. And as far as I was concerned, I thought Dubbo did Anzac Day proud.
I saw some images from Anzac Day in various places around the state and around the country, and I think our numbers would have rivaled just about any of those other ones that I saw. One of the things I really enjoy, Richard, is when the march, towards the finish of the march, so I'm standing on the cenotaph, they're marching up the beautiful crushed granite path that we have coming up there, stirring up a little bit of dust as people march along. School kids in uniforms, it's school holidays, and they've come along in their uniforms. But what I like is I look at the crowd and I think, oh, gee, it's not much different to what it was at the dawn service. And then as the last of the marches come, all the people that have been lining the streets around the city suddenly start swarming out Victoria Park, and then you suddenly realise it's 50 or 60 deep from the people that are standing there watching. So the crowd just suddenly swells and you go, wow, that's much bigger than it was at the dawn service. So very solemn day, but certainly everything went, as far as I could see, fantastically, and just a very positive environment around there.
Okay, I saw you at the airport, frantic, trying to catch a plane, but as I was picking someone up. Anyway, the flight to Sydney was to talk with the Honourable Jenny Aitchison, Minister for Regional Transport and Roads, and that roads word interests me. What was it all about?
Well, it is funny. I did see you at the airport. I didn't have time to chat to you on the way into the airport. I'd done something in Dubbo. I can't remember what I did in the Dubbo in the morning, but they had to get down to Wellington. We had the Youth Week events. We had citizenship ceremony in Wellington. We had the Budengra Community Benefits Fund to hand out, and then jump in the car and drive back to make it just in time for the 1:30 flight to get down and see Jenny.
Yeah, they were calling your name. I heard that.
So this was meeting with Jenny, and again, we've got a good relationship with Jenny. We've done a few things with her already with a couple of different programs we've been involved with. This one here in particular was wearing a slightly different hat. One of the organisations that Dubbo is a member of is a group called Regional Cities New South Wales. There are 15 cities around the state that are members of this particular organisation. I'm the chairperson of this organisation, and one of the projects we've been doing, the last government gave us $440,000 approximately to do a pinch points program. One of the things that we identified was that we've got transport issues in different parts of the state, and most local government areas look at their LGA and try and solve transport problems in their LGA, and the state government looks at highways, but sometimes we think there are some problems with transport, some blockages, or as we call them, pinch points, and no one's really looking at them. So we made a submission to the government and said, we want to look at this across the broader aspect of these 15 cities and the linkages there and see if we can find some pinch points there and then try and address them. We've had that report done. We've finished the report, and now we want to present that report to the state government, because obviously that's who's going to fund that. The report ended up with 93 pinch points across the state, and again, mainly affecting those 15 cities, but across the broader state.
Now, were these pinch points prioritised?
They were prioritised because if we've solved all 93 pinch points, that was $3.9 billion. We didn't think that we'd get $3.9 billion being realistic out of the state government to do this. And Jenny said that we were quite correct in thinking that way. She didn't have a spare $3.9 billion. We then broke
What did we get?
Well, nothing yet. But what we did was we broke down the 10 critical spots out of those 93 because we think that's, well, they're the most important, obviously, but also the cost is a bit more realistic at $350 million, which is still a big chunk of change, but $350 million. Out of those 10, Dubbo actually featured, which might be good or bad, I'm not sure which way you want to look at it, but Dubbo featured at number 3, at number 5 and number 6. And number 3 was Booth and Bar Road, Newell Highway. Number 5 was Wheelers Lane, and that was with accessibility constraints. And number 6 was Booth and Bar with congestion. So those were 3 out of the top 10. Now, they weren't because I was the chairperson. I didn't say, make sure we've got Dubbo featured in there. It was an independent assessment done by the consultants that we had to do this particular work. But it's nice that some of that money could be spent in Dubbo, although it means that we've got some pinch points as well. So it's kind of a good and a bad. Now, again, we didn't expect to walk out of there with a $350 million check. But the critical thing was that Jenny was there. Jenny's got very open ears to listen to what we've got to say. Jenny's staff were there. We had some on a video conference call with Jenny, but some in the room with Jenny. And the important part was that our consultants were under strict instructions to use the same methodology that the state government uses when they're looking at that. The BCR is a big part of it, the return on the investment, if you like. So we had a BCR above 1. It was 1.02. That's always important. It's very hard to get government projects funded with a BCR under 1. In fact, I think they would very rarely do it under 1. So the important part here, Richard, is we've done some of the state government's work for them. Mind you, they gave us the money to do it. But we've now got a report that uses their methodology that we've fed into essentially a whole new range of work that's being done at the moment as we speak in terms of looking at the, if you like, all the transport across the state and seeing what they might do there. So there's a freight reform. So there's a New South Wales freight reform package that's going through. This document now feeds into that freight reform package, and we think that we'll get some of that money out of that at the end of that whole process because we've done the proactive work in the beginning. So no money out of that direct meeting, but this is the sort of thing you've got to do. You've got to keep knocking on doors, keep putting your case forward to be considered in these, and then at some stage we'll get some money out of that program.
Our council's engagement platform fosters community connections. Nice little wordy statement there. Actually, I've got to agree. What's happening there is very, very good.
One of the problems we've seen, and certainly for as many years as I can remember, there'd be an EOI or there'd be something out for public consultation and you'd have different parts of the website or different places you're going to, and you'd say to someone, to do that, go and look at this particular part or that part. And it was one thing for us as councillors to remember all these different sites to go to, but for the general public who might only have one thing every now and again, it was quite difficult. We created a year ago, we created a thing called Your Say, and it's not a brand new thing from us. It's an external organisation that's been part of helping us drive this. But the Your Say platform is basically a hub for all of these different projects, all of these different things that appear. So over the last year, we've had 114 different projects on the Your Say page. Now, again, they could be things like the Community Needs Survey, the Community Insight Survey, that's one of them. It could be an expression of interest. It could be something's out for public consultation. So the whole idea is...
The budget,
yeah. Anything that's going to be involving the public, go to Your Say, and that's where you can find that information. We've had 87,000 page visits during that time frame. So I suppose the important part here is that it's been going for a year. And in that year, we've seen a lot of success out of that. But it's also very easy. If anyone asks me now, where do I go for, I don't even need to wait for the rest of the question, go to Your Say, because we know it's going to be there. It's easy to access. There's various spots on there to go, and I use it from time to time myself, just showing people things. You've got the various basic parts of it that you can go straight to the most current ones are on top, obviously, but you can drill down further and find where those different parts are. I think at this stage there's no question that we are thinking about changing the way we do that engagement. It's working. It's making it easy for people. 30,000 different visitors to it since its inception. So again, I think the whole point here is that it's working well. And again, I think this is something that we'll continue to use, and it makes it more engaging for the public, easier to get that feedback from the public. So it's going well.
Something that I've always agreed with when I was on council, and it is still going, and that is the new residents coming to Dubbo and a night holding, getting them together and coming together and telling them just a little bit about Dubbo, and this is continuing.
Continuing, absolutely, and I agree with you. Back in the old Dubbo City Council days, I think it was very important. We've done it again now with the new council. We've got this new residents' night. 22nd of May is the next one. If you've moved to Dubbo in the last 6 months or so, if you call yourself a new resident, maybe you haven't been to one before, maybe you've been here for longer than 6 months, but you haven't been to a previous one, we basically say, come along, be part of the new residents' night. We're holding this one at the Dubbo Regional Theatre and Convention Centre in the foyer there, and we do change it around. We hold them at the Old Dubbo Jail, we hold them at Lions Park, we hold them at different locations. If you want to attend, then you do need to register, but if you turn up on the night, we're not going to turn you away. The reason we want people to register is we do a bit of catering for the night, so we want to have a bit of an idea.
I knew you were going to say it, register for catering purposes.
Right. So it's nice from that perspective, but I actually really enjoy it because I do a few little things on the night. We give away a few bits and pieces there, but we do some quizzes and that type of thing on the night. But one of the things I really enjoy, Richard, is I try and find out where people have come from and how far away they've come from. And I start off, if you've moved from less than 50 kilometres, tell us about it. And so some people have moved from just up the road. And then I go the other direction and find out how far people have come from. Another state, and suddenly you'll still find lots of people there. Another country, you'll still find a bunch of people there. Who's moved the furthest away? And there might be people that have moved 6,000, 8,000 kilometres. But again, it's just about getting an idea. And I think for the people in the rest of the room, they go, wow, people are coming from all over the place to be here in Dubbo. That's great. But just the number of people as well, that always blows me away about how many people have moved in that time frame and then why they moved. I love to quiz a few people. Why did you move here? What brought you here? So there's a whole range of different reasons people come and a whole range of different things that attract them about Dubbo. But the main part is we've got our arms wide open. We're saying welcome. The mayor officially comes along and welcome. And a lot of people say to me, I lived in the place I was in before for many years. I never met the mayor, never met a councillor, never got so engaged with council. But the other part is we have a range of community organisations. They might be Rotary clubs, Lion clubs, sporting organisations, all sorts of places, because we want people to get engaged, get involved with the community. So people come along and they go, oh, I play a bit of tennis. There's a tennis club there. I'll go and talk to them. I might sign up. Oh, you play every Tuesday night. It's fantastic. I'm free Tuesday nights. I can come and play a bit of tennis. We want those people that have moved here to be engaged with our community. We think they're more likely to stay here. So if you've moved to Dubbo in the last 6 months or so, come along, 22nd of May.
Fantastic. Does the Dubbo Regional Council have any mechanics at the moment?
Good question.
There's been a bit of a problem with mechanics. How are you going?
Well, not great at the moment. We have lost a few mechanics and the rail maintenance facility. In fact, we do lose a few of our employees to the state government from time to time when they're busy. And the new rail maintenance facility is a fantastic facility for Dubbo. And it's interesting.
When we get the trains.
When we get the
next
trains.
year sometime. Or next century.
Or whenever. Definitely by December, just not sure which December.
Yeah, I'll believe that when I see it. But anyway.
So it's a problem for us. And it's interesting when some projects come along sometimes, when some big project's starting, some people say, oh, we want to make sure you employ locals. And in some case, you kind of don't want them to employ locals because they're going to get locals from another business. You actually want them to employ people from out of town, bring them to Dubbo and then make them a local. So we lost over the early part of this year, we lost 4 of our mechanics to the new rail maintenance facility. So that meant that we were a bit short of mechanics. Now we've still got plant and equipment that we need to maintain. We've got graders, for example. We've got light vehicles. We need to maintain all of those. We can't just say, sorry, that's it. No mechanics, we won't worry about it. We've got very strict maintenance programs that we operate under. So for a short period of time, we've been contracting out those. Now, that's not the best way to run an organisation.
It's expensive.
It's expensive, that's right. Now, obviously, you've got to make do with what you can, and employment processes take some period of time. So we've been advertising out there for mechanics. we've probably still got those ads running at the moment. So if you are a mechanic and you want to work for Dubbo Regional Council, go and have a look and put an application in for those. We will employ people again. Some people have said to me, surely that's an expensive way to run the business with mechanics that are contracted. It is. You're spot on. It is an expensive way to run the business. That's not our plan long term. Our plan long term is still have employees. Short term, we had to make sure we filled the gap and could continue to run our services. So we had to make do where we could. But yes, we will be employing mechanics in the future again. We're advertising right now. And we're also looking at the structure of that organisation to make sure we've got the right skills and the right people in those various positions. So we'll make sure we do that as well.
And the right salary.
And the right salary. That's a part of it. And the state government sometimes does pay more.
I think it's a big part of it.
Well, I think employment satisfaction, engagement, there's a whole range of things that employees say are important to them, not just a salary, but the salary's got to be in the ballpark. If you're earning $10 and someone comes along and says, I'll pay you $50, then you're going to consider that even if you love where you're working for $10. So you need to be in the ballpark for salary, and surveys that I've read over many years say that there are things that are much more important to employees than the salary, as long as the salary is in the ballpark. And again, I think the state government sometimes does pay above and beyond, so you've got to weigh all that up. But we'll keep working on that and make sure I've got mechanics back there again. But in the short term, if we have to contract those out, we have to contract those out.
Still on staffing and employment, we have a problem, or is there a problem at the sale yards? And I want to ask you about expressions of interest. But firstly, what's the problem at the sale yard? You don't employ employees there as well?
It's tough. Every business I talk to, Richard, it's tough, they tell me, to get enough employees. Dubbo is absolutely booming. There is lots happening around Dubbo for a whole range of different reasons, all very positive reasons. But when I talk to employers, when I talk to the Dubbo Business Chamber, for example, they talk about the fact that they need more employees. Every business seems to be growing, expanding, busy. They need the employees to run it. And council's no different to that. We've got over 500 employees. We need to make sure we've got all those employees. And sometimes we've got shortages. And sometimes we've got projects, one-off projects that we need to do to make sure that we've basically be able to run our businesses. The Dubbo regional livestock markets, some tasks we've got there are fairly labour intensive. So, for example, cleaning out the troughs, oiling the gates, making sure the gates are all swinging correctly, some of those sort of jobs. And so we've looked at different ways we can fill in some of those. And so we did a contract with Leader Life. Now, Jo Leader there, I've got a lot of time for Jo Leader. She does a fantastic job with Leader Life. Get some young people who maybe have gone off the tracks a little bit and get them back on the tracks. We thought it made a lot of sense to do some contract work with Leader Life to get Leader Life to take care of some of these very labour-intensive tasks around the livestock markets and get some of the people that are engaged there to actually have gainful employment. So I think that's a good outcome, as much as I'd like to have enough staff at the livestock markets to just take care of all the tasks. If you can't do that, you've got to come up with different ways to solve those problems. And I thought that was a pretty innovative way for our staff to come up with something to help a good community organisation in Leader Life, but also to help solve one of the problems that we've got out there.
Okay, the expressions of interest for the sale or lease of the sale yards, how's that going?
I don't know how many we've received, and I don't look at that until the closing date. So that's still open at the moment as we speak. And there's certain interest.
Is the appropriate director getting phone calls about it? Do you know that?
I certainly know that councils are getting phone calls about it. So I don't know about individual staff members, what phone calls they might be getting, but certainly councillors are getting phone calls about it. And at the council meeting we had on Wednesday night in Wellington, we had a packed public gallery, and a couple of speakers at the public forum as well about the sale yards. And I think many of those people were there about the sale yards. So it certainly created some interest. There's no doubt about that.
Some interest has created a lot of interest.
Okay. So, and again, I've talked about it many times, no decision has been made, but it's incumbent upon us as councillors to make sure we're delivering the best outcomes for the community in all the different businesses and all the different aspects of council. So that's important, whether it be council continuing to run it, which is a possibility, or we lease it out, which is a possibility, or we sell it, which is a possibility. Whatever we do, councils will be looking at that and going over the options with a fine-tooth comb to make sure we get the best outcome. And I welcome the feedback. We've got feedback from people. One thing that I want to say, one thing that I think is probably a little bit confused for people is some people have said to me, they've rang me and said, "Oh, Matthew, the sales are really important to Dubbo. Don't close them down." There is no question that we are trying to close them down. Whatever we do, We want the sale yards to be there. The injection is approximately $80 million into our economy. If it's sold, someone is not going to buy it to then shut it down and turn it into industrial land. They're not going to buy it to take out a competitor. The amount of money they would have to spend to buy it, they're going to want to run it, and we will have in the contract they will have to continue to run it for a certain period of time. So they're not going to be shut down. If we lease it out, they're not going to lease it out and then try and shut it down. They're not going to buy it or lease it and then put the prices up so high that they drive everyone away. If I buy a business tomorrow and invest money in buying a business or leasing out a business, the last thing I'm going to do is try and drive customers away. I'm going to try and bring more customers in, Richard. So if I lease it or buy it, I'm going to try and attract more customers. So potentially it might be $100 million injected into the economy. And the same as if we continue to run it, we want to try and run it the best possible way.
But the sale yards at the moment make a profit, don't they?
No. The sale yards at the moment make a cash flow profit, but not a capital expenditure profit. So in other words, if you look at the sale yards on a cash flow basis day to day, yes, we generate a positive return to council, to ratepayers. Fantastic. But then when it comes to the asset maintenance, the asset renewal, it's expensive. When we do things at
well,
the
that's
sale
the
yards,
same with any business, though, isn't it?
Not really. That is a very capital expensive business. Some businesses aren't so capital expensive, but that is very capital expensive. So some people have pointed to the fact that we've got $3.37 million sitting at the moment in council in a restricted asset under the sale yards out of profits that have been generated from the sale yards. So you go, look at that, fantastic, you got $3.37 million. But if you look at our forward projections for amount of money we will need to spend on our infrastructure, we estimate that over the next 10 years, we will need to spend $12.4 million on asset renewals. And over the next 20 years, so it's including that 10 years there that I've mentioned, over the next 20 years, we estimate that we'll spend $46.1 million on asset renewal. So $3.37 million gets chewed up pretty quickly when we start talking about capital expenditure.
Well, that's going to put a lot of people off trying to buy it, aren't they?
Well, and this is the thing, when someone buys it, it's looking at how they might run it and how they might run it differently to the way we run it now. Now, whether that means they change the pricing structure, but I'm pretty confident, Richard, that even if we maintain it, if we continue to run the sale yards, then we as a council will be needing to change our pricing structure because it's simply not able to run at a profit, again, looking at a day-to-day profit versus that overall long-term profit. So a fair bit of work to go there still, but in the meantime, good to see Leader Life out there doing a bit of work for us. So I think that's a good outcome.
I love these things, grant applications. I mean, they're fair enough, and sometimes you win a grant application, sometimes you don't. How's the airport solar car park going and the grant application for that?
So we haven't put the grant application in yet. We're just doing up that application. But I think it would be fantastic. To give you a little background here, the airport itself at the moment consumes about 680,000 kilowatt hours of electricity over a year, and that costs us about $148,000. So it's a pretty big user of electricity. We happen to have some open space there. Now, we've got the secure car park, which has got some sails over that, so people can park their car in a secured area, and they've got some cover. It's not going to cover them against everything, but it's got some sails over there to cover that. The open car park is, as the name suggests, open, and you don't pay to park there. What we're doing is we want to put in a canopy across a third of that car park, but the canopy we want to be solar panels. So we're putting in a grant. We want to have a 510 kilowatt solar canopy and a 687 kilowatt hour battery to optimise the energy management out there. If we did that, if we're successful, we think that would use up allow us to provide about 79% of the overall usage of electricity for the airport. So we're putting in a grant under the Australian Government's Community Energy Upgrade Fund. Obviously, we don't know how we'll go with that grant. We'll put our best foot forward and hopefully get some money out of that. It will be one that needs to be funded 50-50 by council. But again, if we put that grant in and we provide 50% of that, the savings in electricity usage will justify that and we'll pay back that money over a reasonable period of time.
Well, I mean, people pay to park there anyway.
Well, they don't in the open car park.
No, but sort of.
Yeah.
But
and
this is the covered. They do the
secure car park. They do. This car park they don't. This is more about doing the right thing by the environment and saving money, and obviously trying to take advantage of a grant there. So hopefully we'll be successful in that grant. You never know, as you say. You put grant applications in, some you win, some you lose. You've got to keep putting them in to try and get some money out of those. But I think that'd be an excellent project, and there's a big open space there that'd be great to be used with solar panels.
Well, coming up in September, council elections, and there have been some new guidelines for councillor elections. I understand pre-poll will only go for 1 week. Am I correct in saying that?
We've received information from the Electoral Commission, who will be running our election for us, to say that 1 week pre-polling is all that will be required. And I think that's sensible. I think it's hard for people. It's probably a bit different when you've got a state or a federal election. There's a lot of parties involved there. And so those parties that are involved, they can have lots of volunteers to help them with various handing out at various polling booths and pre-poll. But for council elections, it's probably more about individuals, and then they've got to try and get a couple of weeks off work, if it's 2 weeks of pre-polling, to stand there and hand out. And the percentage, Richard, I can't tell you what it will be this time, but I'm pretty confident it'll be maybe 40% or more will pre-poll at this election. Pre-polling becomes more and more popular. So having 1 week of pre-polling, I think, is fairer to those individuals that are running. A couple of other things that I find interesting in the polling guide, there's the election guide, whole range of things that you've got to be careful that you don't do.
Okay, so if you've got some dates there for us, I think that's important.
Yes.
Let's do that first. And then I've got a question for you.
Sure. So the 5th of August is when the rolls close. So you should be on the roll in the area that you live in. So you got to the 5th of August. That means you can vote in that area as well, and that means you can be a candidate as well. So 5th of August is when the rolls close. The nominations open for election at 8 a.m. on that day, and the regulated period for electoral material starts on the 5th of August as well. And that's a technical term about things you've got to adhere to in terms of conditions. 14th of August is the day at 12 noon, which sometimes throws people out a bit. So it's not close of business. 12 noon on the 14th of August is when you've got to have your nomination in by. So anyone that's interested out there, make sure you've got things under control and everything filled in and signed, etc. by then. And then
have you heard of anybody apart from the current councillors who are going to nominate, just out of interest at this stage?
Oh, about 3,000 people tell me they can do the job better than I can do it. So how many of those 3,000 will actually nominate? And I do say that to some people sometimes when they're full of opinions. I say, well, I look forward to seeing your name on the next nomination the next election form when people are going to vote, because some people are full of opinions from the outside, but it's pretty easy to put your name there and say you can get in there and do the job better. Mark Colton one time at an opening of a roundabout, he said, well done to the engineers involved in that, because he said, in my experience, there's about 10,000 engineers that know how to build a road better than you do when you're involved in local government. And I think it's a bit the same with elections. A lot of people know how to do the job better than you do, but they don't always put their name forward. So I don't know anyone in particular. Lots of people have said they'd love to do the job better than we could do it, but yeah, not so much. On the 16th of August is the caretaker period. So that's the period that we as a council are restricted in certain things we can do. One thing I find interesting is that the legislation says, or the guidelines say, that we shouldn't make decisions about a DA that's controversial. Well, tell me what a controversial DA looks like. I reckon every DA is somewhat controversial if you talk to the neighbours. So essentially you want to limit any big decisions you make. You don't want to be hiring a new general manager in that period. You don't want to be firing a general manager in that period. So there's certain restrictions you shouldn't or can't do in that caretaker period. Election day is the 14th of September. So that's the actual election day. And as you said correctly, the pre-poll will be the week before that. 27th of September is the date that postal votes must be returned by. So in other words, going through the postal system, get in there. So results won't be declared before the 27th of September. And the election guide said that probably 30th September is about the earliest date we can expect an election to be declared.
All right, 30th of September. What is the situation regarding you as mayor, A, in the caretaker period, and B, after the election?
It's different. If you remember back to the old days, I'll answer question B first. Back in the old days, back with Dubbo City Council, the mayor of the day
remained the mayor.
Correct, because the legislation said, the Act said, the mayor is the mayor until a new mayor is elected.
Yep.
That's right. So in this, for example, 14th September, there's no council. In the old days, the mayor would have remained on, and then the election's declared, say, by the 30th September. You hold a meeting then, and the mayor, that was part of the job of the mayor. You hold a meeting then, and you've got essentially 3 weeks of the declaration to hold that first meeting. So the mayor of the day would hold the first meeting of the new council, and the first order of business was to elect a mayor. And so that's the mayor remained the mayor until that day.
I understand, though, that this has changed and we won't have a mayor during that period. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, it's changed. And there's actually a contradiction in the Local Government Act now. It still says the mayor is a mayor until an election for a new mayor.
And a mayor's still a councillor too.
Well, that's where the contradiction comes in. A mayor must be a councillor. And these are councils where the mayor is elected by the councillors, not by the public. So a mayor must be a councillor. But then another part of the Act says councillors cease to be councillors on election day. So the 14th September, councillors are no longer councillors. That means the mayor is no longer a councillor. That means one part of the Act says the mayor can't be a mayor, but another part of the Act says the mayor is the mayor until the next election of a mayor. So what they've put out in that is that essentially the guidelines say that the mayor ceases to be the mayor on the 14th September. So at that point in time, you've got no mayor. Now, for someone, and I went to Ray Winslow's birthday on Saturday. He turned 100. Congratulations, Ray. Happy birthday. That's nice for the mayor to go along. If you happen to have someone that was turning 100 between the 14th September and, let's say, the 5th of October, to pick a date, say 3 weeks or so after that, then bad luck. You've got no mayor to go along. Or if you had a new business opening there's no one to cut the ribbon. Or if there was a conference in Dubbo and you want to welcome people to Dubbo, there's no one to welcome people to Dubbo. Now, the guidelines, this isn't the Act, the guidelines say that, yes, you don't have a mayor. So in the guidelines, and I'll read directly from them, councils that elect their mayor, so Dubbo, will not have a mayor in the period between election day and the first meeting after the election when the mayoral election is held. So then it goes on further to say that the Office of Local Government is aware that some councils that elect their mayors have expressed a preference the outgoing mayor should continue to exercise the functions of mayor in the period between election day and the holding of the mayoral election after the election. So council could say that, yes, the mayor of the day continues on to do that. There is nothing to prevent, I'm reading again, there is nothing to prevent councils from authorising the outgoing mayor to continue to exercise his civic and ceremonial functions normally exercised by the mayor during this period in the absence of a mayor, should they wish to do so, even though the outgoing mayor will have ceased to hold any civic office in the council as of the day of the election. So you could have someone, we delegate, we authorise the current mayor to be the mayor in that period. So cutting a ribbon, etc., that's all fine. The tricky part there, Richard, would be, okay, here's the mayor to welcome people to Dubbo. Well, I'm kind of not the mayor, but I kind of am. I've been authorised by the council to be the mayor, even though technically I don't hold civic office. So I'm pseudo-mayor, I'm Clayton's mayor, but I think it would still be nice to do that. So we'll look at that as a council and decide whether we want to do that. The second part's interesting. Given the possibility that the outgoing mayor may not be re-elected at the election and may therefore cease to be accountable to the council and the community, council should refrain from making any delegations to the outgoing mayor, and by that they're talking about delegations in place of being able to exercise the functions.
Yeah, delegation, and this is that word delegation would obviously go to the CEO / general manager.
Well, you have to make sure you've got someone.
Well, someone's got to be there.
Someone's got to be able to make decisions.
Obvious.
And sometimes the mayor is the mayor. I have emergency powers that you need to exercise sometimes. Indeed. And there might be a flood. There might be something where you need emergency powers. So you need someone to be able to make a decision. And a general manager's only got so many delegations. You don't have a general manager or a CEO with unlimited power, unlimited authority, because what's the point of the council then? You need decisions to go through council. So it's tricky. It does then say also that prior to the election, councils should ensure that appropriate delegations are in place for their general managers so they can continue to exercise the functions of the council as required in the period between election day and the first meeting of the council. So the guidelines suggest that you want to give the CEO or general manager some delegations, but they're recommending against giving those delegations to the outgoing mayor because the outgoing mayor may not hold civic office again. So it's a complicated area. And, I mean, I think there must have been something that happened because in the old days that mayor didn't continue on. Maybe there was some mayor that did something a bit silly and abused their powers at some stage. I'm not sure. I don't know of any example, but maybe that happened. So, again, I think what our council will do is we'll look at the civic and ceremonial functions, but make sure we've got delegations to the CEO in between that period. It's a tricky one.
Well, after the complicated situation regarding the mayor, we should move along, I think, and look at the draft budget. Now, the budget itself is been put through council. I understand there was a bit of shenanigans that went on Wednesday night regarding the budget, but anyway, it's through and we can look at it.
Define shenanigans. What does that mean? What does shenanigans mean?
Well, I mean, I understand at one stage a council or councillors voted against putting the budget on display. Am I right in saying that?
Well, I always talk about the resolution of council. The resolution of council is the important thing, Richard. So the budget has been resolved to be put on display, but it's no secret. You can go and look at the minutes and see who voted in what way. And yes, I've seen it before. Sometimes councillors vote against things and maybe they don't fully understand what they're voting against, because what we voted for on Wednesday night at the council meeting was to put the draft budget and operational plan and the various documents on public display. So if you vote against that, what you're voting against is you're saying, we don't want to put it on display. We want to keep it hidden from the public.
That's exactly right. We don't want anybody in the public to see. I'm sure that was the confusion.
Maybe.
I don't know.
It doesn't matter. Councillors, it's a democracy. They can vote whichever way they like. The important part for me is I am the spokesperson for council decisions. The council decision is to put the budget on display. So I would encourage people to go along, have a guess where we've got it, Richard. Where can you go and look at this? Your Say, correct. I know you're about to say Your Say. So that's where you go to.
I was going to say, you go to Your Say and have a read.
Correct. So we've got a lot of documents.
Will it be on
there.
display in the council building and
you can still
like
get
it used to be? And
yeah, you can still get a paper copy from the council building. The other thing we'll do, because there's a lot of information in there, and one of the councillors brought it up, Councillor Wright brought it up at the discussion on Wednesday night, at the debate on Wednesday night, and said there's a lot in there. We're talking about hundreds of pages of information, very detailed information, because it's our full budget. And so Councillor Wright said, is there some way to make it easier for people to understand bits? And we will do some media around what we would call budget bites. We'll just grab some little parts of the budget, how much we're spending on different areas, what are we doing in this particular area, just to give people a little bit more and let them drill down a little bit further on that if they're interested in some of those different parts of it. It's hard to expect the public to go and read hundreds of pages of the budget and then find something that they might want to change there. We really welcome feedback. What I do say to people when they give us feedback, what I like, and they don't have to do this, but what I like is often we'll get requests for more things. It'll be more facilities, more maintenance, more whatever. And I say to people, we haven't got an unlimited bucket. We've got a finite amount of money. If you want more money for something, tell us where you would take the money from. In other words, we want to do something over here, and we think you're spending too much money over there because we need to balance the budget. We just can't keep taking money and not having some way of replacing that money, if you like.
might I suggest that people, when they look at the budget, also look at fees and charges? And normally they go up, and I presume in this budget, fees and charges have gone up. Have they gone up substantially? Usually they're around about 5%. Any more than that in some of them?
In some of them, yes. And we've got rate pegging. So when people talk about rates going up, we've got rate pegging. Now, again, one of the important parts here is that people talk about rate rises. We have not applied for any rate rises above rate pegging. Now, some councils have done that, and we've had a discussion about that.
Well, yes, I mean, ask the people of Bathurst what they think of their council at the moment. I don't think any of the present council will even make it back.
Well, and it's a problem because you're trying to balance your budget, and a rate rise is something that, again, we have talked about, and we've gone out to the community and said, this is a discussion we've had, but we've made a decision not to put rates up.
A wise decision, I believe.
And I think it's a fair and reasonable decision with the cost of living pressures at the moment. But that means we've still got to try and work out a way to balance our budget, Richard. And so we're trying to work out everywhere where we can save money or generate extra income. The sale yards is a perfect example. What's the best thing we can do with that? But that's all of our different business units we're doing that with, and every bit of expenditure. Now, rate pegging applies to our rates. Rate pegging doesn't apply to fees and charges. So there are other things we could put up. We could put up the entrance to Old Dubbo Jail more than the allowed amount with rate pegging. So there are things like that with our fees and charges we can have. So have a look through all of that. And I can't quote you the exact percentage of all the different fees and charges we've got. But yes, there are some that have gone up above the rate pegging amount because, again, we're trying to make sure all of our different business units of council are delivering positive cash flow, not negative cash flow, because we want to make sure it's the user pay system. So have a look at it. Again, go through it all. It's a large number of documents, a large amount of information. it's the right way to do it. It's obviously being transparent and open with the community, but also trying to give them information in a digestible format is important as well.
Fair enough. The Conservatorium, there's been chewing and froing with the Conservatorium. It was to go to Carpet Court, the old Carpet Court building beside the theatre, and it has now decided, well, the Con have decided they're going to stay where they are because the Department of Education, I believe, said it was going to be too expensive to convert the old infant school into current classrooms. Am I right?
Yeah, I'm a little bit disappointed with this whole process, and I'm a bit disappointed with the final outcome of this. It's one of those things that you do the right thing and think you're doing the right thing as you go along the process. And I think councillors, there was one little lesson we've learned out of this, I believe, after we had a bit of a discussion about it on Wednesday night. And having our time again, going back in time a year, we would have made a slight change to the resolution we had of council. You may remember back around March and April last year, there was a fair bit of discussion and debate about the Con.
Yep.
The Department of Ed was about to kick them out of their building. They'd been notified about that for a few years, but it almost became council's problem. I felt like they hadn't found somewhere else to go, and then it was up to council, and they were almost at the point where it felt like it was going to be council's fault if the Conservatorium closed down. Now, it's not a function of council. The Conservatorium of Music is not a function of council. They've got their own independent board. They've got their own independent finances. They do receive money from the state government, and the state government building they're in was where they're being moved on from. So it was up to that board to find somewhere else for them to move into, and they'd had a fair few years' notice. Again, at the last minute, it all became council's problem. Councillors, in our infinite wisdom, made a decision. We said you can have the old Carpark Court building, 139 Darling Street, and the decision was that you can have that for a peppercorn lease, so basically $1 a year. And our resolution said you can have, it was a peppercorn lease for a period of 5 years with an option for an additional 5-year term by mutual agreement. And that was part A. Part B, that the lease amount be reviewed at the end of the initial 5-year period. So in other words, we're going to give it to you for $1 a year for 5 years. After that, let's review it. And by mutual agreement, we can extend that for another 5 years, but we might need to recoup some more money, or maybe your finances have improved, whatever the case might be. That was what we resolved on the 27th of April. We went along with the Conservatorium to get that lease signed, to get them, because they had to do a fit out for it. They were definitely going to be out of the Department of Ed building by the end of the year. Went along, talked to them, had discussions with them, and our staff didn't seem to be getting very far, and they had various issues they were negotiating with and going through it all. It should have been, thank you very much, $1 a year lease for a building, which we estimated was somewhere in the vicinity of, well, at one stage I think we talked about $70,000, and then we talked about maybe $56,000 a year for rent that we could get for that. So that was, and we had to, in the resolution, we had to actually note that, because that was effectively at, if you like, financial assistance. So even in the resolution, it be noted the lease amount is below market value, so it can be considered as a financial assistance grant to the Macquarie Conservatorium under Section 356 of the Local Government Act. So it was a financial contribution to the Con. They hadn't signed it. In the end, I actually said to our staff, I think I'm going to have to get involved here because we need to bring it to a head. So I sent them a letter and said we need to get some resolution here. Council resolved back in April 2023 to give you this, and nothing's happened. Finally, on the 11th of April, we received a letter from the Conservatorium that said that we don't need the lease now, thanks very much. Now, the whole letter's in our business papers if anyone wants to go and read them. So basically, they said, we will respectfully be declining the council's offer of the use of the Carpark Court building for Macquarie Conservatorium. Now, that took them close enough to a year to come to that decision. That's my disappointment. We could have leased that building out. We might have got $56,000. We're trying to save every cent we can. There's $56,000 that could have been in our coffers and wasn't. Now, I don't know the exact reasons. They've extended the Department of Ed. One of the councillors said at the debate on Wednesday night that the Con didn't realise that the next 5 years they may not have a peppercorn lease. Well, the resolution of council said that pretty clearly on the 27th of April last year. They were very happy and excited about it in April last year, and obviously at that time that has changed. Where I think we could have done something better, Richard, is what we should have done again, hindsight's a wonderful thing.
Wonderful thing, yes.
We should have put a deadline on the offer to the con.
Indeed.
We didn't think we needed to do that because they were urgent. They needed this urgently. I expected them to be there at 9 o'clock the next morning signing the documentation to say, thank goodness we've secured this building. Let's sign the lease before councillors change their mind. They didn't do that, but again, we probably expected that to happen. If we would have said, for example, the lease document must be finalised by, give it a month, give it 2 months, whatever, there might have been a short time frame, it would have brought it to a head, and either they would have signed, they would have started moving in, they would have started doing the fit out, or they would have talked to the Department of Ed and found out the information about that in the meantime. So that's one thing that we could have done better, and we'll do that, I'm sure, in the future with any offers we make. But now, bottom line, the resolution from Council on Wednesday night was the Carpet Court building, the former Carpet Court building, is now open to be leased out to any members of the public or any organisations out there. So we'll basically lease it out at commercial rates and go forward from there.
Now, there's been a change to the bulky waste service that we have enjoyed for many years with Dubbo Regional Council, and this came up on Wednesday night at the council meeting. You might like to inform people exactly what's going to happen there. To my way of thinking, there's probably pros and cons in this particular venture.
So it hasn't changed yet, but it will from the 1st of July. We're going to do a 12-month trial. Now, the bulky waste collection, very popular. People love the bulky waste collection.
Well, just explain to people who don't understand the current system.
So the current system is that once a year, your zone that you're in, and so, for example, we've got a rural zone, rural east, Wellington zone, west zone, northeast zone, central south zone, and southeast zone. So they're the 7 zones that we've got around Dubbo, and you get notified about the time frame throughout the year that your zone will have a bulky waste collection, and then what happens is people put their bulky waste out. Now, it could be...
And people go around and sift through it all, and, they might even get an operating microwave or whatever. Yep, anyway,
it's the
or
biggest,
a lounge suite.
It's the biggest trash and treasure program that we've ever seen. So people put out... The idea is that approximately a box trailer worth of bulky waste.
Yeah, approximately. I've seen truckloads, but anyway.
So when people put it out, you're quite right. People go around and they look through other people's stuff, which sounds like a good way to recycle. You put out old lounges or old mattresses and someone goes, oh, that looks better than my mattress. I'll go and take that. Thanks very much. And that's fine. It's not like you're stealing from people. People have put it out to be collected. What does happen, and this is one of the issues we found, what does happen is that Dubbo looks a bit messy during this time frame. And one reason is that people go through other people's stuff, so that makes a bit of a mess. But the other thing is people don't want to miss out. They're told the approximate time frame they need to have it out by, but people are very keen. They put it out early. And so it might sit out there for a couple of weeks before it finally gets picked up. We've been reviewing the way we do that. Again, we're always reviewing different things that we do and how we might do things better. And we looked at some other council areas. So, for example, Tamworth, Central Coast, Camden, Wallandilly, Penrith, Lake Macquarie, they do something, and it's slightly different in each one, but they do something that's like a pre-booking service. So you actually contact council and say, I've got some bulky waste ready to be collected. Can you come and collect it, please? Now, it would be incredibly expensive if we just said, that's open for the whole year. Anytime throughout the year, you can ring and have bulky waste collected and come along multiple times. So what we've proposed as part of the trial is, in the past, you had one time throughout the year you could have a collection. From the 1st of July, you'll still be able to have bulky waste collected once a year, but there'll be multiple times throughout the year on a rolling process where you'll be able to have it. So approximately every second month, your zone will be the collection zone, and then you pre-book it. So you don't just put it out randomly and hope that it'll be picked up in that time frame. You book and say, either via online or via phone call, can I get my bulky waste picked up, please? Yes, you can. Here's the time frame. So you can put it out a day before it's being picked up, not weeks before, and it will only be in smaller amounts because it'll only be on that pre-booking process. I can see some potential issues with the complication of when that time is and understanding when that is, but the good part is if you miss this one, wait a couple of months, there'll be another one coming up, rather than in the past, if you missed one, wait 12 months before the next one comes up. So if you like, there'll be a Monday to Friday collection. It'll be in that time frame there, and there'll be those 7 service zones that'll start for example, and this isn't exactly how it'll work, but in July, 1st of July, it might be zone 1, the first week, second week might be zone 2, etc., etc. That rolls through July, August, then get to September, then it might be back to zone 1 again and then roll through those again. So I can see some little complicated parts in that communication to the public, but it means you've got a chance every couple of months to have your stuff collected and you've got a pre-book to get it collected. What are your thoughts?
My thoughts are, I think if people follow it correctly and closely, it will work. Other people will just say, dump their stuff as they do now on the side of the road and hope that it's going to be picked up at some time. And we've seen that already, and we see it all the time. Maybe that may encourage more of that dumping. Say, oh, the council will pick it up in a couple of months. I'll chuck it out this weekend.
Hope for the best. Yeah, so hopefully that doesn't happen. And again, it's a trial because I can see some positives and some negatives about this. So it's a trial. We're going to give it a trial. And there's a couple of things there. I think one advantage is it will reduce the clutter, and we want to keep Dubbo looking good. We've got lots of new residents coming along, so I think it'll reduce that. The second thing is there is a small cost saving for us. It's not dramatic. There's probably the cost has previously been around that $480,000 mark for that bulky waste collection service. We think this cost will reduce to about $440,000. Again, we're always trying to see where we can save money in everything we do. At this stage, there's only the option to do the one collection throughout the year. So you've got one option to do it. But what we've looked at in some other places is they'll sometimes allow you to do it multiple times throughout the year. The first one you get for free, and then after that you might pay a small fee to get it collected each time you might use the service after that. We're not proposing that at this stage. For the first 12-month trial, it really is just you get your one chance a year throughout the year, but you've got multiple opportunities for that one time a year.
Yeah, well, give it a trial, see if it works. What is the feedback, say, from Tamworth? Is it working there? How long have they been doing it for?
I don't know how long they've been doing it for in some of those other locations that I mentioned, but it's certainly continuing on. They certainly aren't talking about taking it back to the old way. So it seems to be successful. But again, I think some of those places haven't been running it for a long time. It'll be interesting to see. And I think councillors in the debate on Wednesday night, councillors said quite sensibly, it's a trial, so why wouldn't we give it a go?
Yeah, give it a go. Expressions of interest seem to be the go these days with the regional council. Another expression of interest is the running of the 2024 Dream Festival. How's that going? And basically, I understand that the expressions of interest have been extended. Is that right?
Well, they didn't go so well. We got 0 expressions of interest for running the Dream Festival. Now, at first thought, you might say, well, that's bad, or maybe that means the community has basically voted with their feet and said, well, we don't want to run it, so it could die a natural death. But on further investigation, because I'd spoken to a couple of different organisations that had talked about putting expression of interest in, one of our other councillors had as well, they'd followed up with a couple of those organisations and they said, we put one in. And our staff said, well, we didn't receive them. Then we went and investigated further and got our IT team to look at what had happened, and it appeared that the process in terms of submitting the expression of interest, people had started the process, gone through and clicked the various boxes you had to click and had gone to submit, but they hadn't filled in all the boxes, so it didn't actually submit. So it looks like whether it was some issue from an IT perspective or they'd missed a box there they needed to tick, ultimately we said, well, if there are people out there who want to do it, we want to give them every possible opportunity. So we've reopened, so they had closed, we're reopening the EOI process for the Dream Festival. So it's now open again. As we speak, it's already open. It will close at 5 p.m. on Thursday, the 2nd of May. If you do have a problem submitting it, so maybe try and get in early if you want to put it in, then certainly ring council, ring our staff and talk to them about the problem you're having or some issue there. Our staff have tested it. It all seems to work okay, but that's being reopened. So hopefully, Richard, we will get some expressions of interest in for our Dream Festival.
I mean, you've got to say that for a Dream Festival, someone to actually put their hand up or a group to put their hand up, it's a hell of a lot of organisation and they have to go through it. And it's a lot of organisation between now and when the thing is on. And it would have to be a very solid group of people who wanted to do it.
It would be, and there are lots of those groups out there. Keep in mind, Richard, I've said it to a number of people, it doesn't have to be what it was before, because some people have said to me, our group's not big enough to run a month-long event. And I said, that doesn't have to be what it is. That's what it became, as part of that whole process for Dream, it became a month-long event. But you don't need to do that. You could have a weekend. You could have one night. You could
That was my assumption. I would assume that anybody who wanted to do a Dream Festival would say, well, we can't do it for a month, we can't do it for a week, but we can do it for a weekend, or maybe a long weekend, say a Friday, Saturday, Sunday type event. Friday night, the first one, Saturday, and then Sunday finishing, in the afternoon. That would seem to me to be the best option.
And make it whatever you want it to be.
Yep.
So it doesn't have to be what it was before.
Exactly.
You can make it what you want it to be. And you think back about how Tamworth started, which was basically, I think, 2TM was the radio station. It was a little country music awards dinner. And then look what that's growing into now. The Elvis Festival, again, you had some passionate people in parks who wanted to start up with the Elvis Festival, and that has grown and grown. So it doesn't have to be what it was before. Get the passion going, get the interest of what you want to do with it, and then run from there. And I hope we get a number of expressions of interest in. And I hope, Richard, the councils have a really tough decision to make in terms of, wow, look at all these great EOIs. Which one are we going to pick out of all these wonderful ones that are out there? And that'll be the ultimate thing as far as I'm concerned.
That would be the ultimate. Well, it comes to that time of the week where we have to say farewell. But just before we do, we look at the limerick of the week. And this week it's a pretty obvious one. I don't think you need to explain it.
Is this your highlight of the week yet, the limerick of the week? I want to get to the stage where you love the limerick so much.
A couple of this is the third week I've done this with you. The limericks this week is the best of the three.
Either you're saying
you want to mark out of 10. You want to mark out of 10. Oh, the first week was 2. Last week was 3. I think this one's going to run at 6.
Oh,
there you go.
I've got to get working on them then. Right, here we go. At the cenotaph, Dubbo paused to reflect. Silent homage to those we respect. Wreaths laid with care in the crisp morning air. A community's tribute, perfect and direct.
It says it all.
Thanks for coming along again, and we've got a few more weeks with Richard until Mark Barnes returns from overseas.
Yep, well, so I'm back next week, am I?
Back next week.
Look forward to it.
Thank you, Richard.
Straight from the mayor's mouth with Matthew Dickerson from Dubbo Regional Council.